on the south side of Chicago, at about 64th and King Drive. We're talking about around 63rd and King Drive down to about 66th. Is a set of apartment buildings, a set of residential buildings known as Parkway Gardens. Okay, now, prior to 2010, that was the only name that I had known it by. I had been a cab driver in Chicago, and I had driven past this area. And, the only name that I knew it by was Parkway Gardens. But there was a member of the Black Disciples from Parkway Gardens who went by the name of Odie, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit, who was killed there, I'm saying about 5-6 years ago now. R.I.P. to him. And after he died, Parkway Gardens was renamed O-Block by the young men who lived there. Now, the people who live in O-Block, the young guys who live in O-Block, are Black Disciples. I think pretty much everybody who lives there is a Black Disciple. They're clicked up with several of the surrounding hoods. Front Street, Lamron, 300, 600, okay? They've been made popular by the rap game, okay? Nationwide, people didn't know what O-Block was. People hadn't heard of O-Block prior to, 2011. But O-Block was made nationwide famous by the rapper Chief Keef. Chief Keef Sosa, real name Keith Cozart, who I know pretty much everybody listening to this video has already heard of. I'm going to talk about him in a second and his street reputation. But Chief Keef started shouting out O-Block in his songs. Okay, and this was actually, when Chief Keef started to refer to it as that was the first time that I had heard to it referred to as O-Block. Now, this block has gained not only a reputation, but actually a an irrefutable statistical fact that this block is the deadliest block in all of Chicago. Now, Chicago, is obviously the murder capital of the United States as far as, straight homicide numbers. And this block is the deadliest block in Chicago. Now, some people say, well, what about, you just said Garfield Park is the deadliest neighborhood. That's as a neighborhood, okay? Chicago is divided into neighborhoods, into communities, okay? O-Block is, I believe, part of Greater Grand Crossing as the community. That community is not the most violent in Chicago. However, when we're talking about single blocks, single city blocks, O-Block consistently over the years records the highest number of deaths, and it's just made the news again with the death of Takiah Holmes over there, who was shot by O-Block Rage as he was busting at some ops from STL Taekwondo World who were coming through O-Block. I've also done several stories on this channel about girls that have been stabbed to death on O-Block. There have been many kids who have been killed on O-Block, showing the fact that this is a dangerous area not only for gang members. There's a lot of crossfire. There's a lot of just irrational, random violence that takes place in this area. If you drive down O-Block, this is an area that I've driven past many times. And as soon as you come under the L station over there, is like a bridge over King Drive. As soon as you come under this viaduct, you start seeing like people who are obviously strung out on drugs, yelling at each other across the street. Guys who are obviously drunk, walking around with their pants like half off. It's an area that really, you can imagine a kid growing up on this block would grow up with some issues, because just the things that you see over there is not the kind of stuff that kids should see growing up. Okay, and I'm just talking about just out there on the street. Now, like I said, most of the people who live in O-Block, in these buildings, are Black Disciple members. Okay, however, like I said, today Chicago is mainly just blocks, and their affiliation is mainly to their block. The main beefs that O-Block has, the main other blocks that they're into it with, that they fight with, STL Taekwondo World is probably the top one, okay? And many of the deaths that have occurred on O-Block, okay, are not hits that are done by O-Block members. They're hits that take place on O-Block but are done by their ops, okay? The most recent one that I had recounted to you guys was, Big A was caught over at Sammy's restaurant by K.I.'s brother in revenge for her death. Taekwondo World, STL, EBT, Tukaville, Jarl City, that's probably their biggest beef. However, they're also into it with basically everybody that's into it with 600 as well. Okay, all of 600's ops are pretty much O Block's ops too. Okay, because they get along with each other. Now, I had seen some chatter online that TYMB and O Block are like riding together. Here's the thing, like O Block Ocho and Moneyman and TYMB Moneyman are cool with each other. However, I wouldn't say that TYMB and O Block are clicked up. There's actually sometimes some tension between O Block and TYMB. They're not. It's not like they're beefing, but I wouldn't say that those two gangs are clicked up the way that 600 is clicked up. They don't always get along, TYMB and O Block. Okay, because TYMB's main ops are Chris World. Okay, and there's been some street politic confusion as to who exactly is getting along with Chris World and who exactly is not. So that's kind of a confusing situation, but TYMB and O Block I would not say are clicked up together. Again, they're not sending shots, they're not into it with each other, but they're not getting along either. All right. Although some members from those two sets do get along. Now, another gang that they're into it with is MOB. Okay. Now, MOB, like I told you guys, this runs from about, they're along Wabash, like in the high 50s. Okay, I'm not exactly sure which blocks they're at. It's like 56, 57, 58, 59th along Wabash. Okay, the high 50s in Wabash, that's where you can find MOB. And MOB, they're into it with Front Street. Now, you're going to ask, how did Front Street, 600 and 300 and Lamron and all them, how did they click up with O Block? It's kind of just guys knowing each other. I mean, Chief Keef and Fredo Santana and Blood Money, you guys know they were cousins. Blood Money and Fredo were from Front Street. Chief Keef was from O Block. You had Lil Reese, who's from Lamron 300. He hangs out with members of O Block all the time. They just kind of, people were asking, like, is it just because they're BDs? I mean, not really. It's more just because guys are related and guys know each other from those different blocks, because there's other BDs, I'm saying, that they're not necessarily clicked up with. People were asking, are THF, because THF and 600 are close. People were asking, well, so is THF and O Block clicked up? Not really. That's another one of those situations where, they're not into it, but they're not really clicked up either. Although there are some guys from there who do get along with each other, but it's not like they're not as close like 600 and O Block are. THF. But anyways, so the top killers from O Block. The top killer from O Block is a guy named King Von. Okay, he right now is locked up on a murder. All right, he's locked up on a murder, and he most likely is not getting out for killing a guy named Modell from STL. His government name is Davon Bennett. Okay, now here's the thing: King Von only has one body. So you ask, well, how could he be their top killer if he's only got one body? Here's the thing: there's not really anybody from O Block currently alive who has more than one body. But he's only got one body, but he has a reputation for putting in mad work, just being a shooter, letting off shots all the time, and being the first one to want to ride. I mean, he just he was like the go-to guy for O Block when he was out on the street. Davon Bennett, King Von. But anyways, yeah. So King Von killed a guy from STL named Modell. Okay, now the way that this went down. He killed this guy Modell at a party, even though this guy Modell, he wasn't really, I think I'm pronouncing that right, it's Modell or Model or something like that. I think his name is spelled Modell. This guy was not really like an op. He wasn't really like a dangerous op to O Block. But what happened was that Modell was friends with KI. Okay? Modell was only 15 years old, and King Von killed him over on STL's block. Now, exactly why he killed this kid, I'm not sure, because Modell wasn't like a dangerous hit-a-op to O Block or anything like that, but he's booked right now for killing him. Now, just to get this out of the way, that guy T-Roy, who was just recently killed on 71st, he had a body which was Boss Trell from STL. Okay, that was his only body. Now, the other top hitters from O Block that are out right now, one is a guy named C-Murda, and this guy was Sharad's brother. Okay, now Sharad is a guy that they lost. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit, but C-Murda, This is one of those guys like number 30 from STL, who has a reputation for being a killer, but I'm not exactly sure who he's killed. Like, he's one of the guys who's better at kind of keeping quiet what he's done. He has that reputation, but I'm not going to say definitively that he is, because, again, I don't know any specific bodies that he's got. DQ is another guy who's a top killer from there, who, again, I don't know what body he has. Now, the top killer from O-Block, who is dead right now, and who was, one of the guys who was putting in probably the most work for O-Block, was this guy J Money. All right, now this guy appeared in a lot of Lil Durk's stuff. He was one of Lil Durk's homies. J Money had killed a guy from Jarrow City called P5. P5 was on 64th in St. Lawrence, and J Money was kind of just rolling through STL's hood looking for an op. He didn't see anybody, but he saw P5 out there, and he knew that he was from Jarrow City, so he shot P5 in his face, and P5 died. Now, J Money also allegedly had something to do with Boss Trell's murder. He had gone along with T-Roy on that hit, and again, I'm not sure if he actually hit Boss Trell with any shots. T-Roy is the guy who got credit for the hit, but J Money had gone along on that hit with him. Now, J Money, he was killed by Lil B from STL, who was STL's top killer. O-Block was never able to get back at Lil B for that, because Lil B was killed by the cops during a chase a couple of years ago. As far as the guys who O-Block has lost, I'm not going to be able to name all the guys, but some of the most significant guys that they've lost, a guy named Sherrod, who again was C Murder's blood brother. They also lost a guy named Toon, who I had said was possibly killed by either KI or Wooski from STL. However, that might have also been number 30 from STL. This is one of those things where I don't really know. Duck's brother, he has a reputation for being a killer, but it was, most likely somebody from STL, one of those three guys, Wooski, KI, or number 30, who killed Toon from O-Block. Another guy that they lost, the most significant guy that their block is named after, Odie, he was killed by KI, and that was her first hit. That was the hit that kind of made her reputation. Now, people are going to ask, was Odie himself a killer? Odie himself did not have any bodies that I know of. However, he had let off shots at Jarrow on several occasions, and they had tried to kill him because he would ride through there and actually let off shots, but never, quote-unquote, scored, as they say, okay? But Odie was a shooter, but not a killer. All right, now another guy that they got out right now is this guy, Trey 5. He supposedly is a shooter, but not a killer. I don't know of any bodies that he actually has. Now, another guy who was a killer from there, who who just recently deceased, was Big A. Okay, now Big A was responsible for killing KI, okay, from STL. Now, the way KI's murder went down, guys, she actually died on Boss Trell's birthday. She was revenge for J Money. Okay, Lil B had shot J Money several times and killed him. Then on Boss Trell's birthday, KI actually tweeted Wooski that she was on the block, and O-Block saw the tweet. Now, the way that they knew that Big A was the one who had killed KI was because FBG Butta was actually there at the same time. Big A came up and killed KI in the same situation, like not right at the same spot, but like in the same, kind of like in the same incident. FBG Butta also got shot in his leg. He was nearby KI when she got shot. But he didn't have a gun on him. The cops were not too far as well, but they couldn't get there fast enough. Okay, now, after that happened, Butta told people that he had seen Big A's face. Then 2 days later, STL rolled up to O-Block while they were walking across the street to get something to eat, and they shot at them. But didn't kill anybody at that point. Okay, now, like I said, FBG Butta had gotten shot in his leg, and, they really wanted to turn up for KI big time after that. She was revenge for J Money, though. Now, another guy from O-Block who was a shooter was that guy Cheno, who just recently got killed over the summer when he was in the territory of, like, MOE, No Love City over there. And it's controversial as to who killed him because, like I said in that last video, I had heard that somebody had called STL to come do the hit on Cheno when he was over there in their territory. Now, Cheno had shot a guy named FBG Young in his back over on STL's territory. And Cheno is now dead, but you know, it was kind of disputed as to who had shot him in his back. That was reportedly Oblak Channel that had done that. People are going to ask, well, why did STL and Oblak and them kind of get into it? It was because, you know, why did KI target Odie and all of them? Like I said, TYMB, some guys from TYMB and Oblak had been rocking together back, I mean, we're talking like 5-6 years ago now, okay? And TYMB had been made by C-Ball from STL. So again, when Oblak started kind of hanging out with TYMB back then, STL saw them as a threat, and it was like, I don't know, it's kind of complicated, but KI, you know, she just came through and caught that body and killed Odie. Now, I know the big question that a lot of you guys have, you know, your favorite Oblak member, Chief Keef Sosa, you're going to ask, was Chief Keef a shooter or a killer, or what was he? Chief Keef has no bodies, okay? None. As far as being a shooter, he doesn't even have a reputation of being a shooter. However, he is a guy who has a reputation of having some type of, well, for a few incidents, some type of guts, because as you guys know, he was locked up for allegedly, well, not allegedly, because he was actually, you know, locked up for it, but, and he never denied it either. He was locked up for pointing a gun at the CPD, all right? And as you guys know from what happened to Lil B from STL, that's not a very safe thing to do. Now, you know, like I've told you guys in a bunch of my videos, people always say, you know, every time, you know, one of these police shooting videos comes out, they say, you know, a white guy could empty a clip into a cop's wife, and the white guy wouldn't get shot, whereas a black guy so much as pops a, you know, piece of bubble gum in his mouth and he's going to get blasted. Well, it's just like with gang members. Just like every gang member is different. You got some gang members who are savage, and you got some gang members who are just about money. You got some cops who are savage and some cops that just want to get their paycheck and go home. And Chief Keef had the good fortune of pointing a gun at some of those cops who just wanted their paycheck and to go home. Okay, he did not point a gun at some savage cops. There are definitely some cops who Chief Keef, if he had pointed that gun at them, we would not have a lot of the songs that we have today, because he would have been dead right there on the spot. However, you know, Chief Keef got lucky. All right, he upped the gun at the cops and didn't get shot. But you know, there was also a rumor that he'd even gotten into a shootout with them. I don't think that it was confirmed that he actually had let off shots at the cops, although that does happen all the time too in Chicago. But you know, actually Wooski from STL had done that, and Wooski's still alive. But Chief Keef, I don't think ever busted at the CPD. He's not a shooter, he's not a killer, he's just a trapper, okay? And now, him and his cousin Blood Money, same thing. Blood Money doesn't have any bodies either that I know of. He was just into the trapping stuff too, just like Chief Keef. Now, Blood Money was from Front Street. I'm going to talk more about him in my video on Front Street. Fredo, you know, I'm going to just talk about him real quick because I know you guys are itching to know about Fredo, because he's also, you know, Chief Keef's cousin. Even though he's from Front Street. Fredo Santana has no bodies, you guys. None. Okay, he didn't kill JoJo. He doesn't have any no hits. Okay, and this is something that you guys, you know, when I said that on my video about Fredo that I have since taken down, people were saying, oh, well, Fredo's just one of those kinds of guys who keeps his mouth shut. You guys, that's not the way it works in Chicago, man. If you catch a body, it's going to get out. Somebody's going to know about it. It doesn't matter if you keep your mouth shut or not, because, you know, people know what happens. Like, the streets talk. You know, even if you don't talk, the streets talk. There's no such thing as staying anonymous about a body in Chicago. If Fredo had ever caught a body, because it's not like you can somehow keep a secret that guy is now gone. Okay? If a guy disappears from another gang and, you know, doesn't show up to school or, you know, come back to his mama's house one day, people are going to start to ask questions. And people are going to know, okay, you wrote on this guy and why you did it and all that kind of stuff, just based off of the fact that what the situation is on the block. Okay, you know, he was over here rolling through his hood. He was here, you know, standing outside on the block. You know, who else caught him? People are going to know. People are going to talk. It would have somehow gotten out. Fredo has no bodies, none. He's not a shooter. He's not a killer. He didn't have a reputation for any of that. The guy who Chief Keef and Fredo kind of had doing their dirty work for them, like the big hitter in their circle who was doing the stuff for Chief Keef and Fredo and Blood Money, was a guy from Front Street named Dada. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this guy more in my video on Front Street. He was the killer, like in their circle, who was doing the dirty work. Who Keith and Fredo kind of had as their trigger man. Dada from Front Street, not Keith, not Fredo. So, a lot of people talk about in these videos, they've been gassed up by a lot of social media and by a lot of YouTube, honestly. And, honestly, just by the way Fredo looks, it's one of those things where people judge a book by its cover and they judge by appearances. Fredo has always been a guy who's just strictly about the money. I'm not saying none of this to diss Fredo. You guys know me. Being a killer, in my view, is something that's bad. That's something you don't want. That's something you should be ashamed of. You know what I'm saying? Fredo, he's one of the guys who's always just been about getting on and getting some paper and, and making a living. That's why he was just always about the trapping stuff. You know what I mean? Fredo, he's one of the guys who's like one of the smarter guys. Even though it seems like he's not smart because he's always just high as a cloud, Fredo is one of the smartest guys to come out of this hood. Seriously, as far as like the decisions that he makes and the business decisions that he makes, he didn't kill JoJo. He didn't have nothing to do with that. He didn't have nothing to do with none of that stuff. You guys are going to ask, well, who did kill JoJo? There are two names associated with JoJo's murder, who it might have been. The most likely is a guy named Pooh from Sean Money, okay, who currently is locked up. The other guy is a guy named Kiki, who I don't know that much about. I just heard Kiki's name from a few people, but it was most likely Pooh from Sean Money who killed little JoJo. It wasn't Fredo, it wasn't Lil Reese, it wasn't none of them. Okay, and that's a known fact. This is not something like in dispute. So, that was just kind of an assumption that people made off of the fact that, Chief Keef and them were, beefing at the time. Chief Keef didn't even really know Lil JoJo, and Fredo and them, they weren't really even into Lil JoJo. JoJo's beef was with those Lamron guys, okay? And, he died on the same day that L.A. Capone killed Omar Quebec. And L.A. actually got the wrong guy when he killed Omar. He thought that Omar, I believe, had killed Baldy, but he didn't. Omar didn't kill Baldy. I'm going to talk about that more in my video, though, about 600. But this guy, Dada, who was like the trigger man for Keith and Fredo, he had killed a guy named Junebug from M.O.B. Dada has a reputation for a killer, but again, that's for that Front Street video. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, well, O-Block isn't that dangerous anymore because the buildings are almost empty. This is false, okay? True, O-Block has lost a lot of residents. However, it's still, one of the most dangerous. I wouldn't call it the single most dangerous location in Chicago. If I had to pick, a specific block today in 2017 that's the most high-risk area of all of Chicago, I would have to say it's that area around Kedzie and Roosevelt in Garfield Park, down by Douglas, Kedzie and Roosevelt, that area around there. This area now, and this is for a separate video, but just for those of you guys from outside the city who want to avoid particular areas, there's police activity at this area like nonstop, man. Like, I used to have to go down this route, almost every day to work, and it's an area that you just almost like always have to avoid. There's always something going on over there. That's like one of the areas where like all the homicides are occurring now. But O-Block is still one of the most high risk areas, especially for kids. You know what I'm saying? Because people on O-Block are they're just out there like they're just out there shooting off instinct. They don't stop and think. They don't think. They just shoot. Okay, and people are rolling through there all the time. If you go down there and you've actually physically been there, it's one of these areas where things are kind of open. You know what I'm saying? Along King Drive in that area, it's kind of like you can't really roll down King Drive and be anonymous and be like hidden. It's too much of like things are too visible over there. There's not a lot of cover along King Drive. Now, some of the biggest rappers from O-Block, Prince Dre, Boss Top. Boss Top's currently locked up. He was, made famous by DJ Academics for being the quote-unquote diaper bandit. Okay, that's another. I'm not going to get into that. That's you guys can check out DJ Academics for that whole situation. Just look up Boss Top, DJ Academics. But Prince Dre, he's been releasing a lot more music lately, and just the name O-Block has clout now. You know what I'm saying? In the industry and stuff. Even if you have that attached to your name, but. Yeah, that's one of those things where the rap game just idealizes murder, and so because that's, one of the blocks where the most murder occurs, it gets clout. But Prince Dre, their music it's typical drill stuff, though. But at any rate, guys, R.I.P. to Odie, Tune, Sherrod, Cheno, Big A, and everybody else from O Block that's been killed, because you know a lot of the guys from O Block really, I mean, they're just guys that want to get on with their careers and stuff, but they're in such that area is such a target for so many different ops. You know what I'm saying? 051 Young Money, STL, MOB, and all of them. There's so much stuff going on over there that, like I had said in that video about O Block Rage, who, by the way, I mean, technically O Block Rage is a killer, but I don't even count that because he killed a little girl. You know, it's an area where, like, you come down there and you just know stuff could pop off at any second. So, you know, I didn't grow up in an area that was that hot, and just, you know, being able to imagine growing up in an area that I know is a constant target and there's constantly ops rolling through trying to catch a body over there, you know, I can't honestly judge anybody over there because I don't know how I would react in that situation. You know, I don't know how I would react if I saw somebody that I knew was probably there trying to kill me. You know, a lot of people who come from outside that situation look at it, you know, from kind of like a self-righteous indignation point of view and just say, oh, these guys are monsters, these guys are killers. But, you know, you're growing up in an area where you've seen guys die all over the place. And this doesn't just go for O Block. People are going to say, oh, I'm just taking sides with the BDs now. This goes for everybody, you know, in all of those hoods down there in that Woodlawn, Greater Grand Crossing area, because it is an area where you're basically growing up in a war. You know what I'm saying? In a hot war where, you know, daily you see guys coming through who are trying to take your life. So it's just crazy like that, man. But people were asking on one of my last videos, like, do you think that these gangs have any connection with Satanism? Not directly. Like, they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't say, oh, we worship the devil or anything like that. But murder, obviously, and the stuff that goes on, there's definitely a spirit of that in Chicago in general. You know, not just down there. There's definitely a spirit of that in Chicago in general, just the murder and all that kind of stuff. The cult to murder that we have here and how that's glorified so much. You know, it gives people that rush that becomes like an addiction. And you got guys out here rolling around every day just looking to catch an op, then go get hyped, you know, get pumped up because they just killed somebody. You know, that rush of just having taken life. It's you know, it's the devil's spin cycle, like I said, man. There's definitely that spirit of Satanism down here, man, but people just don't call it that. Which in a way makes it even easier to get sucked into. But anyways, man, RIP to everybody from O Block. This is your boy Chicago News. I'm out.